Morning, campers. Back to the rooibosch. I want to talk about suicide. I know it's not a very cheery subject, but there's been a lot of posts that I've been reading recently from people saying they've had enough, they want to get off, they want to give up, they want to, end their lives. At the same time, there's other posts from people saying, I'm not suicidal, but I've had enough and I'm in uncharted territory. And I understand this and feel the same quite often. Not suicidal at all, but it is uncharted territory that I think we're in at the moment. So the only way I can kind of approach these subjects is by telling you my own stories and seeing if anything helps. If you feel like this at all, or you think anybody would benefit from this message, then feel free to pass it on. But I've said on my podcast, if you've never seen me, it's called The Mark Outward Show, Adventures in a Cosmic Suit. And I started that in 2020 because I was compelled to do so. Because I didn't want us to live in the New World Order, and I knew about all the satanic ritual abuse, and I knew about the plan for the new American century. I knew Clinton was supposed to win in 2016. I knew a lot of stuff. I'd been a conspiracy theorist for years since I left the Air Force in 1988, 9, whenever it was. And on that podcast, I've talked about the fact many times that I was close to suicide, let's put it that way, in about 2017, 2018. I can't remember the exact time. And I've learnt since then, and I've learnt, and I've talked about this a lot as well, that there was really to do with the unseen realm trying to take me out. And that's, if you're feeling suicidal, that's what it is. It's the voices, the demonic realm wants to take you off the board because you're here to hold the light. If you're understanding anything of what I'm saying, then you are here to hold the light. There's a very interesting X account under the name of just the letter B that says the same thing but in a slightly different language, which is well worth looking at. That you are a recursive node within a simulation, which is the same. It's a different way of saying what I've been saying for years, which is that if this message is resonating with you, you are a point of light in the consciousness field that is holding a lattice together of consciousness that is holding it on behalf of everybody. And for that, you should be congratulated for getting this far. And there's another very interesting X account which has a different viewpoint, which talks about the angels and the ascension, the events that is supposed to be happening, which will happen in a flash. And that's Cab, K-A-B. Go and look him up as well. The two don't agree on everything, but that's okay, right? Because holding different versions of this reality is a skill that a lot of us have to master. And it's my belief that, my knowing that things are revealed to us at the time we're ready for them, or in a divine timing. So, this is why it's not important to not get bogged down with dates and events and Trump's done this and Trump's done that. And, that kind of stuff is something that's easy to get embroiled in. But it's not actually going to help you that much if you get caught up in it. And I talk as somebody that gets caught up in it more often than I should, because I'm human as well. And the matrix itself wants to trip you up, stop you, and will be very subtle about it. It could be like somebody pretending, or somebody genuinely thinking they're helping you, but actually they're trying to screw you up. So just beware of that. But when it comes to suicide in particular, I've lost a lot of friends to suicide. 2 friends when I was in the Air Force. One stabbed himself with a knife through the stomach because he was so stressed about not getting the grades he wanted in his degree. And the other one crashed his plane on purpose. And I was one of the first people on site in order to pick up the pieces of the aeroplane that had been left on the beach, where he had deliberately spun into this beach and broke his back. And somebody ran to, walking their dog, ran to help him, and smelt the fumes and ran away, and then he burnt to death. He was only 19. A very dramatic suicide. Then there was a very dear friend of mine who was a very deep thinker, and she said she got sectioned, and I called her up when she was in the nut house, as we used to call it. Couldn't say that sort of thing now, could you? But yeah, I called her up and I said, what the hell's going on? I'd not seen her for a couple of years. And she said, and she'd studied theology, and she'd grown up within a cult, right? And God knows what happened to her in that cult. But because that cult ended up being closed down because of the massive amount of sexual abuse cases against the leaders of that cult. Anyway, she said to me, "This is hell." And I was a bit flippant at the time. I said, "Well, yeah, I know it's a bit rough sometimes, but, you know." She went, "No, Mark, it's literally hell." And then she took an overdose. And I bawled like a baby at her funeral because, and I did, the two guys, when I was in the Air Force, I was a teenager then. And there was a few things I learned from that. I remember being in the officers' mess, and a lot of the other guys were doing jokes about his ghost being there. This is like a day, 2 days after he died. This is like our colleague. And I was shocked as a 18-year-old, I think I was, at their inhumanity. Now, some people call this gallows humor. And gallows humor is something else to bear in mind as well, is the fact that I was different to a lot of them, not just spiritually, which I now understand, but I didn't go to public school and they all did. And I was actually telling my kids about this the other day, that public school in the UK is not like the US. Public means it's private, expensive, etc. And I know lots of people, aristocrats and not quite aristocrats, who've been to these institutions and get sent there at a very young age. One of my friends talks about being in this uniform, stood there crying his eyes out as his parents drove off. These places are designed to create the leaders of this world. And the only kind of leaders that they want are people with no empathy, or who've been abused so badly that they don't know who they really are, and that they can't feel anything anymore. I'm not saying everybody that went to public school goes through this, but it's part of a kind of an initiation process, especially in the UK, and of course in America. And this is why they have things like the Bullingdon Club, I think it's Oxford, and if you haven't heard of that, look it up. And the Skull and Bones at Yale, and there's lots of these kind of not quite secret societies where they go through these initiations. The main one being called cremation of care, which is a big ceremony in the satanic rituals. Like simple stuff like burning a £50 note in front of a homeless person is one of them. The rest of them are usually sexual and pretty horrific. The TV series Black Mirror has covered a few of these, especially related to David Cameron about 10 years ago, but you can go and do your own research into that for yourself. But the point I'm trying to make is about where we're at the moment. Suicide is their greatest wish for you, right? If they can get you to take your life, it's a big result for them. And please don't do it. And the reason I'm saying that at my age, after having been through it, I was never suicidal in my life. I've always been an optimist. Always, whatever situation I've been in, I was like, it'll be okay. I'll get through it. Blah blah blah. But this time in 2017, 2018 was really dark. It was kind of like I would get into the shower. I just remember, this is what I remember, getting into the shower every morning was like Groundhog Day. And I'd be like, oh, I'm in the shower again. And I couldn't see any point at all in doing anything. If it wasn't for my children, who saved my life actually, with their love, I don't think I'd have made it through, but I did make it through. And I got told then that there was more to come and that we were going to be okay, which is why I ended up starting the podcast. This is why I still make videos, because I know that these messages reach the people that need to hear it. And if you are feeling lost at the moment, or like you've had enough, just hang on, okay? Just hang on, because what's over this hill is amazing. I mean, I also talk about the fact that, once you realize that you're an eternal soul, what are you afraid of? But fear still comes in, I still get anxiety over things. I still make mistakes. And, that's human. It's normal, these things. But you can get through it, and you will get through it. And if you can, it's going to be so incredible. I mean, I once did a show with Mel K about 4 years ago. And back then I was joking around a lot. And I started the show with, I thought I had a really good joke, which was that everything we were going through then and still now is, I think the joke was that I'd found a secret document, and it was like explaining the whole process we were going through, and it was called the really, really tight shoes policy. Because that feeling when you take off a pair of really, really tight shoes? It's amazing, isn't it? Your feet feel brilliant, but they wouldn't feel that elation if the shoelaces hadn't been tied so tightly. So it's kind of like, I think that's where we're still at. And that feeling, hang on to that feeling of how good your feet are going to feel when the shoes come off. Hope that helps if you needed to hear that today. Have a great day. God bless you.